it was immediately like, whoa, what the hell is that? It was in, I assume, infrared, either, yeah, black hot for that one. So the white clouds around it. And yeah, it's almost playful in its activities, or like it was startled. But it's one of those cases where I look at it and, you know, it looks like a flying saucer, and it was often labeled like a floating brain or an organic or irregular shape, so that's why it's in there. So yeah, I've seen multiple instances of irregular shaped things that look thematically similar to the jellyfish.
A new bombshell has just dropped from the Weaponized podcast with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, where they've been interviewing Pentagon Whistleblower Matthew Brown, who is the author of the Immaculate Constellation document and has dropped information on Congress and is trying to pave the way to open the door for humanity to actually escape from the Matrix. These are not my words. These are the words from the whistleblower Matthew Brown coming out of the Pentagon, saying that we are trapped in some kind of an illusion, that we are in a dream, and that this is a matrix that is being controlled by some kind of a force outside of ourselves, and that regular humanity has been left behind.
We live in the Matrix. It's just much more boring than the movie. This is held in an illegal internationalist regime, some sort of international cabal of sorts, mix of corporate, military, political, intelligence, and criminal interests that have come together, and they have subverted us and have taken this and have made it the source of their wealth and power. The reason they're here is us. I think life, especially sentient life, is a precious thing. And I think to some, it might be a resource. I think humanity to some level is a resource for them.
Like a commodity?
Possibly a commodity, possibly a form of entertainment, possibly medical related. You are not free. And this reality has far more to it than you have been allowed to believe. And God is real.
There is a connection between the paranormal, UFOs, and the myths of ancient history. The clues are scattered across the landscape from a forbidden past, maybe even in your own backyard. There is a connection between the true nature of our reality, consciousness, and the unexplained. I'm Carl the Crusher. Let's explore the unknown. Before we get too far into this Matthew Brown interview about how we are trapped in a matrix, he says all kinds of shocking things. He even says that there is a God, that God is real, and flat out says that we are on a type of prison planet, that we're stuck in a matrix. And this is all shocking information. He flat out says that there's different types of non-human intelligence, and even within the same species, there are different factions. So before we get too far into that, we have to go back to this testimony that was given by scientist Dr. Eric Davis, who was speaking at a UFO panel in front of members of Congress and other people coming out of the government who are whistleblowers and part of the UAP topic in and out of the government that are trying to take action on this. And Eric Davis had some crazy and fascinating things to say. He talked at length about his experience working in these different agencies, how they're compartmentalized, and how he was given access to different information. One of the things that I found the most shocking and validating is that he talked about how a lot of his information regarding around UFO crash materials and the origins of them and how they came out of Corona, the Roswell UFO crash, how he absolutely named Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut Edgar Mitchell, as being a key and central figure on that. This is something that here on the Carl Crusher channel, we speculated about over the last year. And I've even made videos where I talked about how Edgar Mitchell, I believed, was the person who was born in Roswell, New Mexico, was there and knew people and the families who were involved in that incident, and that he was friends with members of the community there that had crashed recovered material that they had hidden, and that Edgar Mitchell actually had smuggled that UFO material out of Roswell, New Mexico, and that he took it and planted it with his friend Art Bell at Coast to Coast AM on the radio show in Las Vegas, Nevada. And at that time, the young news reporter Linda Moulton Howell was working for Art Bell, and she was able to navigate that into the hands of Dr. Travis Taylor, from who now works at the TV show The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch on the History Channel. And also it went from Dr. Travis Taylor to Dr. Hal Puthoff after that. And when Dr. Hal Puthoff had it, he then turned it over to the Stars Academy with his work there, after it had remained for a long time with him and Dr. Eric Davis at Earth Tech. Now, we don't know exactly where that UFO material came from, if it actually did come from Roswell, New Mexico, or if it came out of somewhere like Skinwalker Ranch or Mount Wilson, Nevada, on a different expedition, and then they're just saying that it came out of Roswell, or if they actually have multiple pieces of UFO material from different places. But he actually goes on to talk about the different analysis and the spectral analysis of this UFO material as if it is 100% real and that it's a fact.
So it's due to astronaut Ed Mitchell, Dr. Ed Mitchell, Captain USA retired. Because of him, and I won't go into a long story, but it's because of him that I got on the trail of looking for the so-called legend within the UFO community. The retrieval of crashed or landed UAP craft, or UFO craft as they were known back in those days. And by the way, UAP, the term unidentified aerial phenomenon, goes back to the 1940s even. So I followed this trail, and I ended up, over the course of the following 2.5 decades, working for Bigelow, working for the Air Force Research Lab, working for Hal Puthoff at Urtech International Incorporated, and then working at the Aerospace Corporation. So we're working in a combination of industry and classified programs that we were contracted to do on behalf of for the Defense Intelligence Agency and for the Pentagon agencies that Lou worked at, and the UAP task force that Jay Stratton led at the Office of Naval Intelligence. And so a long story short is that I came into contact with industry leaders, technical scientists, both active duty and later retired, as well as intelligence officers, generals, admirals, colonels, people who directed intelligence or human intelligence collection and analysis directorates at the DIA and the Central Intelligence Agency, who reached out to me to have me do some foreign UAP intelligence analysis and assessment. And so I have been exposed to so much in the classified realm that I can tell you definitively that they're there. The human race, basically the world's biggest governments, like the United States, our adversary China and Russia, at least as far as I know, have had the occasion to recover craft that have either landed or crashed or both in their territory or even outside of their territories, and have taken those back to the most sensitive of their programs that they've ever had. These programs are even more sensitive and more well hidden than the Manhattan Project was, or the modern nuclear weapons industry and the U.S. military and the Department of Energy programs to maintain and upgrade and modernize our nuclear weapons arsenal. And so this is one of the most well hidden programs. It is hidden from congressional oversight, and always has been. And it was hidden by the action of President Eisenhower, who instituted presidential emergency action directives during his administration. These directives are not shared with Congress. They are classified. And when the Freedom of Information Act was instituted in the 70s, those are not subjected to the Freedom of Information Act request. These directives provide cover for actions that are associated with the retrieval of these vehicles. and the scientific and engineering study of them. And that takes place within the industry. What happens is the Department of Defense offices, CIA offices, they create shell companies. They give a sole source contract to the shell company who passes the money to a selected group of defense industry firms. And those firms will take that contract money and turn it around and use that as internal funding. It's called internal research and development funds, which they give to their own people inside their company, their own employees, to do the reverse engineering and analysis and study of these recovered vehicles. And so this avoids all congressional oversight. It avoids the gang of eight. And it's one of the most clever techniques used to hide it. And as far as I know, only one 4-star general and one 3-star admiral were able to locate these programs. And that's about as much as I can say. They located the programs and they uncovered them. One got a lot of resistance and hostile reception and was told that he found who he was looking for. They were who they were suspected of being. Yes, they were a UFO, UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program. The other one had a lot more political power behind him because of his stature as a 4-star general. And he was able to get into the program and use his authority and his access. I think they call that a super user. The super user that has access to all special access programs. So he had his capability to be able to look into that whole thing. I was fortunate to meet Dave Rush at the behest of Jay Stratton. Dave was a NRO liaison officer to the UAP task force, and Dave was working for his boss at the NRO, which is situated in the second floor skiffs of the Aerospace Corporation building in Colorado Springs. And I was assigned to work at the Aerospace Corporation facility in Huntsville, Alabama, because I was supporting NASA's Space Nuclear Propulsion Program office. So Jay put Dave and Dave's boss and I together, and I briefed them for 2.5 days, just the week before COVID struck. And Dave took all of my classified and proprietary information of all the investigations I did at NIDS, AFRL, and working for help put off at EarthTech, and he took that data and ran with it. And what you now know, the aftermath of that was his classified whistleblower complaint to the IG of the IC. And so there is a there. We have had this program going on in various guises, various code names. Code names change roughly every 3 years. They often shift around due to major office and programmatic reorganizations for presidential administration, or maybe every 5 to 10 years in some cases. And so these things are very old. They've come in, they've gone, but they're still around. And the amount of money that's been involved, I would say since the beginning in 1944 with the first recovery in Italy, of the U.S. Army's recovery of a craft that crashed in Italy back in 1933. The United States Army, when it invaded Italy and pushed the Third Reich out, they were able to recover that craft and bring it back to Wright Airfield.
1933 was the first recovery in Europe, in Magenta, Italy. They recovered a partially intact vehicle.
It's long been known that the regime of dictator Benito Mussolini documented numerous UAP during this time. This internal memo from the Italian secret services includes crude drawings of the UAPs.
It's true, it's real.
Yeah, that actually happened. Italian government moved it to a secure air base in Italy for the rest of kind of the fascist regime until 1944, 1945, and the Pope Pius XII back-channeled that.
So the Vatican was involved?
Yeah, and told the Americans what the Italians had, and we ended up scooping it.
So let me be very clear about this. You're saying that the Catholic Church, the Vatican, they know about the existence of non-human intelligence on this planet?
Certainly.
Grush says shortly after the dawn of the atomic age, another major crash recovery took place. You've probably heard of it. What can you tell me about the Roswell craft?
When my dad passed away, we found this photograph in a chest full of pictures and his military records. And in the military records, it said that my dad, while he was stationed in Germany, actually had cosmic clearance. And while he had cosmic clearance in Germany, he did a trip to Italy. And we didn't know where this photograph was taken until I did some comparisons. and I lined up the tile on the ground and the doors in the background with this cathedral in Milan, Italy. And everything matched up except for the fact that it never made sense why my father was there.
What makes exotic material that has been recovered from the U.S. government exotic? What makes it different from atomically and chemically?
It's actually a very simple answer. It's the way it's fabricated. It's the way it's fabricated. That's what makes it exotic. It's not a new element that's never been discovered and placed on the periodic table of elements. No. The materials are in the periodic tables. They're either radioactive isotopes that we already know of, or they're any of the other non-radioactive, non-actinide elements on the table. It's just the combination of the materials is unusual. It could be that you could say that that's exotic, but it's the composition, it's how you built the craft, the materials that form the craft and everything inside the craft. It's quite exotic because one of the company's leadership was a young material scientist when he graduated with his doctorate in material science from one of the universities in Illinois back in 1970. And he was hired by Dan Rich to go to work with him and a team at Skunkworks. That was the Advanced Projects Development Agency, I think is what Lockheed Aircraft Company called it back in those days. So basically, this is what he was telling me. He's an advanced material scientist, and he said, well, we could use the best diagnostic equipment we had back in those days, which was 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and we could see the elements through mass spectroscopy that compose these structures. But when we look at how they're composed and structured, it's like nothing we've been able to fabricate on Earth. We've never been able to reproduce it on Earth. And we have no extrapolated engineering or physics technology to tell us or inform us on how we could possibly learn how to fabricate this on Earth. So they understood that it's the combination of the elements was very unusual. It was counterintuitive, but it's the way the materials are fabricated. That's what makes it exotic.
And among that conversation, Dr. Eric Davis actually talks about and names different types of non-human intelligence. One of the types that he says is the actual classic alien gray. And he says that those are the types of actual bodies that were found in the Corona crash or the Roswell, New Mexico incident, and that those bodies were recovered. And he goes into some detail about what that means. Not only does he talk about there being typical grays, like alien grays, but he goes on to describe that there are Nordics, actual like tall white Nordics that you would consider to be like the tall blonde-haired, blue-eyed ones that we hear about in the stories. And then he also goes on to talk about how there are insectoid ones that are like mantis types or that look like the ant people, which I think is also really fascinating and validating when you take into consideration all of the ancient Native American petroglyphs and the different pictographs and the hieroglyphs that we see all across the desert Southwest and around the world, and even Aboriginal cultures in Australia, and how they depicted these entities and even described them as the star people and the ant people. And then here we have Dr. Eric Davis actually listing them and naming these as being one of the official types of alien species.
This book, somebody, I don't know if it was him because he never, I think he said it was him, went inside one of these craft that he had access to, and they couldn't recognize any propulsion or power devices or systems inside the craft. It was completely unusual. Travis Taylor and I have speculated that possibly they're teleporting energy from a remote, distant location where the energy is produced and is teleported to the craft. And that's how the craft can move around without having to carry propellant or a rocket engine or an advanced warp drive engine on it. That's one possibility that we've speculated on.
On the material, so what you have me thinking is carbon can take multiple forms, right? And are you saying that is the same with other material, other elements? The way in which what we found is different forms of these elements that we have.
It would be different alloys. It'd be different combinations of the elements.
And isotopic ratios as well, correct?
Yeah. So you're going to have a variety of whatever structural part of this that came off of the UEP, and I don't know because I didn't have Wade Bennett knowledge SAP access. I only had TSSCI. So at the SCI level, I was informed that there'd be combinations of elements from the periodic table, combinations of their isotopes. So we have the variety of elements as they naturally occur, or some isotopes of them mixed together in a certain way, and then they're structurally built in a very unusual way that even today we have no equivalent or analog to. So this is about as much as I was given information at an SCI level.
And do you have, or can you comment on whatever species have been piloting these craft? How are they large? Are they multiple species? What was their size, and how many are usually on a craft?
They're typically the multiple species. People are familiar with the Greys, the Nordics. People have talked about reptilians and insectoids. It's not that they're reptilian or insectoid, it's that they resemble to the percipient a reptile or an insect type humanoid, because they have a head and four limbs and torso. So
large, small,
human size, human scale.
And are there how many are accrued?
Well, the Greys I'm familiar with from investigating the crash at Corona, which is misnamed the crash of Roswell. It's not the crash of Roswell, it's the crash of Corona in Mexico. Those were Greys, those are 4 foot tall. And the Nordics are typically human size, probably, I've heard 5-6 feet tall. And same with the people who mislabel reptilian and insectoid, they're roughly that top height too. I haven't heard anything about anything 7 or 8 feet or 9 feet tall. Interesting. Of that nature.
He said that there's actual reptilians. This is almost like what we would think about in our nightmares. And I don't want to try and portray any kind of fear mongering. I don't want to put any prejudice out there into ufology or try to join this whole concept that there is like actual things that are preying upon humanity. But when we take this conversation and disclosure coming out from Eric Davis at face value, if we say, if this is real, if this is an actual thing, then we're talking about a confirmed 4 different types of non-human intelligence species. And then when we shift gears and we look at this new video that came out from the Weaponized podcast with Matthew Brown, he confirms everything that was said by Eric Davis, maybe not in the same amount of detail, but he actually says that regular humanity, day-to-day humans, you and I who are sitting here watching this video, the vast majority of us right now, that we have been left behind, that there is a form of non-human intelligence and higher species, that part of that has chosen to control us as some sort of a resource like humanity, and that self-awareness and human consciousness is being treated like a crop or a commodity that is being harvested and traded or somehow cultivated on Earth, like we are part of a prison planet or in a matrix and we're being farmed. Now, this might be terrifying. This might be a shocking part of disclosure, but it sounds like in the testimony that came out from Matthew Brown in this interview on the podcast with George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell, that he actually is confirming that in his testimonies when he went to Congress, that there was a dramatic shift in the culture, that the people who are actually in charge, the congressmen and the members of Senate, the people who are in the positions within the government, that they are being handled, that there are lobbyists and handlers that are in place all around them that are pulling the strings, and that these factions are connected to some sort of an outside force or an agency that is being controlled and manipulated, that has put the rest of humanity into an alternate version of reality.
Why has everybody agreed to not say that to the public? Do you have any philosophies why?
I think in the West, this is the reaction, and that's an important distinction. I cannot comment so much on why Russia or China have not addressed this in a different way than us. But I think in the West, in the Five Eyes Alliance and its subsidiaries, there is a understanding, at least, that this is not talked about at official channels, especially if you're a small kid on the block. You don't speak out of turn. But it also points to, I think, the fact that this doesn't ultimately reside in the government anymore. This is held in an illegal internationalist regime, some sort of international cabal of sorts, mix of corporate, military, political, intelligence, and criminal interests that have come together, and they have subverted us and have taken this and have made it the source of their wealth and power.
That's what astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell told me in one of the last films before he died. He used very similar words.
Well, that doesn't make me feel good.
Yeah, well, he was sure of it.
Understand that we might have freedom of speech, but that has been subverted. We do not have freedom of inquiry. We are blocked from learning what we need to know. Just in the public world, we are blocked from advancing in science. We are taught false science intentionally to prevent us from learning more. We live in the Matrix. It's just much more boring than the movie.
This could be taken in various different levels. When we listen to what Matthew Brown says at this, and when he talks about the type of conditions that we're in, he is confirming that these UFOs are real, that they show up in different purposes, like they are crafted and formed for specific intentions. Like maybe if you have a flying saucer in that shape, that it is created for a specific purpose. And then out of that comes different drones or miniature devices or probes that are sent out. And this is almost like classic science fiction that we're hearing about. And now it's being confirmed by insiders coming out of the Pentagon and whistleblowing all of this as being something that's real. He actually confirms in this interview and says that from his knowledge that they have defense mechanisms, cloaking devices, that they have ways of making their video footage and the pictures and data collection turn out blurry or get spoofed. This is all stuff that we ran into in our research every time we go up to places like around Skinwalker Ranch, when we've worked over at Mount Wilson, and when we get close to the phenomena, oftentimes it's almost like there is a barrier or a defense that confuses our GPS, that causes people to experience paranormal activity. And when we think of this almost like a defense measure, like a barrier that is meant to give people who are getting close to the target sort of paranormal phenomena and effects, it triggers their fears, makes them think that they're encountering demons or ghosts or supernatural entities. But really what this is doing is projecting a sort of hallucination within the matrix of reality and giving us experiences as a defense mechanism to keep us from finding out what's really going on.
And I think in general, there's so much misinformation, stigma, mythology that people grow up with that lead them to just automatically categorize any of this as just false, fake, not real, misidentified,
Or mundane. Yeah.
Well, I mean, getting an image on a thermal camera 100 miles out to sea in total blackness sounds pretty cool to me. That sounds like an amazing accomplishment. But are there additional reasons that have been maybe discussed behind closed doors, force fields of some sort around these craft that make things blurry, even for from a good camera image? Do you know?
Probably a very real explanation for why certain shapes are harder to observe than others. I think, whether it's active camouflage and like the skin of the vehicle itself, that definitely seems to be in play, or a field like you describe. I've seen evidence of fields around crafts.
Yeah, some things we've seen have looked so bizarre, it makes no sense to my brain. It is possible, we've heard that from a number of whistleblowers at different levels, that what you're seeing could just be a part of a greater structure, so it could be something like that. But this one, and you keep going on, a boomerang shaped, jellyfish shaped, tic tac shaped, you're not just making these words up. Like, you saw visual evidence of these.
Yeah.
And so did have George Knapp and I. We have been exposed to, along the years, a lot of visual evidence. But this one, the large disc in the clouds, just explain to me seeing something like that.
Well, number one, it's pretty striking because you're watching it from space. It's always cool to watch satellite feeds. And that's just something the general public doesn't get to see. And then, too, just the size of it, it was immediately like, whoa, what the hell is that? It was in, I assume, infrared, black hot for that one. So the white clouds around it. And yeah, it's almost playful in its activities, or like it was startled. But it's one of those cases where I look at it and, it looks like a flying saucer, but it might be one of the things that maybe that was actually one of ours. In the wrong place at the wrong time.
What do you mean it looks startled? What does that mean?
It's just looking at an area over the ocean is what it appears. And this thing just comes trundling along from like underneath the cloud cover, comes up. And then right when it's like almost center frame, it scoots off to the side and like tries to get out of,
Like it comes into it and going, oops, somebody spotted me. I can get out of here.
Exactly. It was visibly, that's the feeling it had.
That was kind of haunting to me. We checked when we were with some friends recently. I never know. We are not qualified to know if some of the things we've been exposed to are legitimate or not. But when I get confirmations like you describing this and other people we've just recently talked to, I know that footage exists. We've been exposed to it. And I think that's a nice piece to the puzzle for the public.
When you think about the movie The Wizard of Oz, throughout the entire movie, the characters and the different aspects of those characters are trying to overcome their weaknesses in order to get to the Emerald Castle at the end of the Yellow Brick Road. And when they actually get there and they pull the curtain back, they realize that the great Wizard of Oz that has been controlling their entire perceptions of reality is really just a man or a person that is full of flaws and weaknesses, that is pulling a piece of technology, a lever, pushing a button and turning a dial and creating a great deception. And apparently, even if there is non-human intelligence, even if there is other life forms, alien greys, Nordics, reptilians, and insectoids, and they are out there colonizing our planet, using us as a human commodity and a resource, and human trafficking us as like we're on a type of matrix or a farm being utilized for resources. If that is the case, then allegedly, according to Matthew Brown, within the government itself, there is a new awakening. There is a realization and a splinter faction that is occurring where insiders have realized that there is an element of this non-human intelligence that wants to set us free, that wants to wake us up from the dream.
Who are they? Why are they here? Why don't they show us what's going on?
I think I have a good degree of confidence that the reason they're here is us. I think life, especially sentient life, is a precious thing. And I think to some, it might be a resource. I think humanity to some level is a resource for them.
Like a commodity?
Possibly a commodity, possibly a form of entertainment, possibly medical related.
Think they live here?
Yes.
For all intents and purposes?
Yes.
Always?
I don't know about always, but it certainly appears that they have been here for most of recorded history. At least some element of this has been here for most of human recorded history.
You think we would see them if they didn't let us see them? Even with our more advanced sensors, that they pop up, but they can also disappear. And do they allow us to get these glimpses? Is that a game of some sort, I wonder? Or an education process?
It's a bizarre one that I could not understand if it is a game. I think they're both just as powerful as we think, but also less. And I think there is not a single they here. Certainly multiple factions of the same species, if not multiple species. And all the complexity that brings, which might be our best hope.
do they have an agenda? There's different types. What are your philosophies on this? Like, who are the others? Why are they here? And you've touched upon it. I know we're kind of going back a little bit, but that is the big question. And I just wanted to separate so people understand your exposure and your personal conclusions.
So I have been exposed to no direct information on the anatomy, biology, intentions, culture, politics.
Never came across those files?
Never came across those. I think those are all some of the deepest secrets.
Right. They would be if this is correct information.
What I have learned is that we live in a dream, a carefully constructed reality. We make use of a science that is tightly controlled and suppressed and distorted. I think we are left behind.
Humans.
I think normies, the normal humans, the people have been left behind. Us. People need to understand that we might have freedom of speech, but that has been subverted. We do not have freedom of inquiry. We are blocked from learning what we need to know. Just in the public world, we are blocked from advancing in science. We are taught false science intentionally to prevent us from learning more. We live in the Matrix. It's just much more boring than the movie.
I think about whistleblowers like yourself. You're about to find out, assuming we release this, you're about to find out what the price is for coming forward. And there are other people in the same kind of position who are wondering what they should do, who are basically being held in limbo. They've worked in classified programs their whole life. That's what they do. That's what pays their bills. And they're held in limbo, and that's held over their heads so they don't come forward. And they're debating taking the same steps as you. There is no hope or help for anything like folks like that, is there? I mean, we've heard promises. We'll help whistleblowers come forward. We'll give them support. There are private equity funds and organizations that say they're going to help, but we haven't seen shit so far, have we? And have you?
No, I've reached out directly to institutions that claim that they are here to help UAP whistleblowers specifically, both in the process of coming forward and any sort of stability afterwards. It's been radio silence. At best, at worst, one of those institutions has stolen my information. There is no organized help for whistleblowers. It is all controlled. It is all at either the special interest of industry that wants to get in on this, or by the existing powers that be.
Intelligence agencies who have infiltrated or created these things.
Correct.
I have directly experienced that, sadly, over this last year, which is the vacuuming up of intelligence on people such as yourself who are trying to do the right thing as whistleblowers.
Matthew Brown actually calls this reality that most of us are living, that we are in a dream, that we are in a matrix. What does that mean? Well, it could mean a couple of things. It could mean that according to just propaganda, misinformation on the news, being told false information about our reality, and being taught certain types of science and math and information about reality that is a lie in order to deceive us, that in and of itself creates like a psychological matrix. But if he means that we're in an actual matrix, that we are in an actual dream, then what he's talking about is that some kind of an outside force or entity, whether it be non-human intelligence or a form of technology that has gotten away from us, has now put all of us and our conscious awareness of reality into a false hologram. Meaning that when you get up and go to your job day to day, all of the things that you're doing, working, paying your bills, putting on your shoes, taking a shower, everything that you do in your life is all an actual dream that is projected into the mind. And that who we are and what we are, where we even are and what reality is, we actually have no idea because we are existing within a delusion. That would mean that everything that we're seeing, experiencing and perceiving is a user interface that is being fed to us as a lie, as a form of theater, and that all of the appearances that we take as actual reality is not actual reality, and that we are living in a projected dream that has apparently been hijacked by higher intelligence and forces that want to utilize that for their advantage. But the good news is, and the silver lining is, you can tell on the face of Matthew Brown, his mouth is quivering, his cheeks are turning red, he's obviously nervous and sweating, he's holding his hands, he's fidgeting. This is not a scripted interview. This is something that he is genuinely concerned about, like he wants to get this information out. And in his final message, what he says very clearly is that God is real, whatever that means, and that there are forces out there and people within the government that are finally waking up to the reality of the situation that we're in. And they're turning and beginning to question the handlers that are surrounding them, the lobbyists and the people that are whispering into their ears and telling them these lies that have kept us all in this matrix. So let me throw this out there. What do you guys think? Are we actually in a prison planet? Are we living in a type of delusional hologram that is being projected into our minds? That when we do meditation and when we explore our actual consciousness, we sort of escape that and we transcend and we begin to perceive the walls outside of that veil and we begin to see the realms and dimensions beyond that.
I think deterrence, strategic deterrence, has migrated out of, has evolved from being relying on nuclear weapons as the pinnacle.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we have, and others have developed the means to maybe utilize nuclear reactions to create some very dangerous effects through directed energy.
Your concern is directed energy weaponry.
Among many.
Among many.
But when it comes to WMDs and relations to this technology, I think we have been successful in both deriving new science that we have then suppressed to preserve a strategic advantage. And I think I probably don't want to talk too much more about deterrence.
Our news is controlled, our media is controlled, our music and our perceptions of the way that reality works and who is running it, the type of medicine that we use, the food that we're eating, and how we perceive reality as being hijacked through the media. Well, I personally believe that it's layers of all of that. And it could potentially be that we actually are in a type of dream. What I mean is that this matrix or this dream is a projected reality, and that we are trying to wake up from that, and that there are entities and agents at play within this that are helping us to awaken and try to figure this out and to try and find the way out. And what's fascinating is it sounds like that there's factions that are trying to keep us locked in, and there's elements that are trying to set us free. And it's quite possible that the roles of what we believe is good and evil, God and the devil, right and wrong, light and darkness have been inverted like a mirror, or have been flipped on us in order to deceive us and to place us in this position. So we're going to have to drop our prejudice. We're going to have to drop our understanding. We're going to have to drop and look at different places and sources of understanding beyond what we have been told and what we have been sticking with. So it's up to us if we're going to look at these people that are coming out of the government and look at what they're telling us and trust them. But Matthew Brown is clearly describing multiple different types of UFOs. He is going on and talking specifically about jellyfish UAPs and UFOs appearing as though they're like actual stereotypical jellyfish or living brains, floating brains that are floating through the sky, as he describes it. All of this stuff is coming out. It's coming out from Eric Davis. It's coming out from Matthew Brown. And it's up to us to try and decide as this is happening, how much of this is real, how much of this is deception or misinformation, how much of this is validating what we already know and what we're finding independently. It's up to us to try and sort this out. But the news is coming out, the whistleblower information is coming out, and it sounds like there's going to be a lot more information. Missing pages from the Immaculate Constellation document, and a lot of footage of transmedium UFOs and UAPs, flying saucers, and all different types of non-human intelligence. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are trying to set us free, and even within the species themselves, there are different factions, and all of them are here and have been interacting with humanity since the beginning of recorded history. All of this is starting to come out, and you can see it on Matthew Brown's face, that he's not joking around, that he's afraid for his life, and that the risk that he's taken to try and awaken people is like going into the center of Congress and talking in these private meetings and trying to wake people up from a type of hypnosis. But it sounds like people are beginning to lift the veil and beginning to see for the first time.
It's time, move forward. I know that you had some encouragement with David Grush. I hope people are encouraged, also by you. Look, man, if you were to die tomorrow because of whatever reason, what do you want people to know right now? Like, what do you want people to know if you're just like fucking on?
You are not free. And this reality has far more to it than you have been allowed to believe. And God is real.